And that one prompt was, that was the prompt, read Proverbs. That was July 2020, and look where we are right now. I will first, so listen to the prompts now. Whatever the Holy Spirit speaks to you, He's going to be dropping on you again. Amen. And so our first panel today is Wisdom in the Marketplace. And it's going to be a delight. I have joining me the illustrious, dynamic, successful Robin Gentry McGee, founder and former CEO of Functional Formularies. And I also have with me Sonia Moore. She is the founder and CEO of Moore Planning and Consulting. And so both of these ladies are successful. So we want to get right to it, and we want to allow them space to tell us a little bit about themselves, and then I'm going to ask them a few questions, and then we're going to open the floor to you. What would you like to know? What wisdom, what little nuggets would you like to have about being in the marketplace? And let me tell you, Sonia is behind the scenes, and Robin slew so many giants, nested, okay? That's what she had to battle on the battlefield, nested, and slew them, beat them in the marketplace with her product. So, they're here today, so you don't want to leave without something. So I'm going to start with Sonia. Tell them a little bit about yourself and what you do, and then I'll start getting their questions.
Well, my name is Sonia Moore, and I am the Chief Execution Strategist at Moore Planning and Consulting. Say that again, Chief Execution Strategist, because execution is missing in small businesses. And what God gave me is to help overwhelmed entrepreneurs gain peace and order in their business through planning and processes, so that they can make their business more profitable. So when you're working with me, it's from the inside out in your business. It's not just what it looks like on the outside, but what is happening on the inside, because that is going to help you grow and scale so that you can serve the way that you were meant to serve in your business to the community. So why did I start my business? It'll be 4 years of me working in my business full time this year. So that's a blessing, having survived through the pandemic. Yes. So I have more than 25 years of corporate experience where I have served corporate leaders at the executive level to understand their needs, how to connect with them, and how to make them look good, because that's what you do when you are boots on the ground. So that's my foundation. But that wasn't enough for me. So God said, you know what? I was getting a little agitated. And I'm like, why am I agitated? Because there's more for me. So I went back to school, got my degree, and I went into leadership. So I started working for Fortune 500 companies. And I learned the secret sauce of what it meant to manage not only people, but products, and marry the two together. And being on the ground, I was able to lead complex enterprise-wide domestic and international projects. So that sharpened my skills. Fast forward, I did that for 11 plus years at that leadership level. And the Lord said, you know what, it's time for you to move on. So out of nowhere, I was severance and was devastated, but only for a minute. Because now it was time for me to reinvent myself and use all of those skills through all those years to serve and help small business owners. And that's what I do today at Moore Planning and Consulting, and I absolutely love it. Ms. Robin.
Yes, thank you, Pam. My story started, a very long story, but the last few years. My father had an accident in 2005 and was dying in a coma. And basically the doctor said he should pull the plug because there was no hope for him. And if he lived, he would be a vegetable. But most of my adult life, I studied holistic and integrative nutrition and medicine. And before I could feel comfortable saying goodbye to my father, I felt I needed to look beyond Western medicine and see if there was anything being offered that my family was not being offered. So it first started with, I called to my acupuncturist. My parents were in Michigan at the time. And I called my acupuncturist in Dayton, and I said, I remember a conversation we had with this ring, and we were talking about bringing patients out of a coma in acupuncture. And I just remembered this. And I said, do you really think this can help my father? And she said, absolutely. And so the first thing we did was to try and get an acupuncturist into the hospital in Royal, Michigan. And they refused. It was against hospital policy. So then we found an acupuncturist in the area and put a sign on the door that said, family prayer service in progress, do not enter. So then we began to treat And so there were a number of other modalities that we did, and slowly came up with them. And I believe it largely had to do with the acupuncture techniques. He opened his eyes on about the third day and looked up at the nurse and said, by this time they asked the medical professionals when they entered my dad's room to let him know what was being done to him, because they used to come and stick needles under his finger and toenails to make sure he was and he opened his eyes and she said, Mr. Gentry, I'm shaving you. And he said, what are you doing now? that was the beginning, but continued to search to try and heal, like divine intervention to heal my father. And this had been months by this time, but one day I picked up a can of food they were pouring down his feet into, and I read the ingredients, and I was appalled. The ingredients, the first ingredient was sugar, followed by 40 grams of sugars, high fructose corn syrup, and synthetic vitamins. And I said to my mother, this is why he's not getting any better. There's something healing for his brain, for his body, and this sugar will formula. And basically, I said, we just need to find something healthier for my dad. She agreed, so we started looking around. I asked all of his RDs and nutritionists and doctors, is there a healthy formula? And everybody said no, to my amazement, nothing more than I would probably be able. So I then went to my DO and told him the situation that I wanted to create a healing formula for my dad. My background as a chef, I've been in the food business for a very long time. And he said, no, I understand what you want to do, but you need to find an internist to oversee the process, because I had to have a doctor's order for everything that touched my dad's body. And so actually I found the doctor, Dr. Sorwell, right down here in the road with Avenue. He was an Indian doc. He used to come into my restaurant when I had my restaurant. And so I called him up into a food situation and I asked if he would be willing to oversee the process, and he agreed. If I were to put a note in my dad's chart that he wasn't responsible if my father passed, which was fine because he was dying anyway. So I started the process of making the formula and I finally figured it out. And within 6 weeks of switching him over to this formula, which we began to call it with him in my family, because it was so nice. He was a different person. On the 6-week visit, from Dr. Sorrell taking him in, Dr. Sorrell offered the appointment call and said, it's a miracle I can't do with him. And I said, it's not a miracle, it's nutrition. Something that we're missing the boat in this country for people who are sick and dying. So I just closed my restaurant, and I think my dad had his accident, and I did not want to take the food business with people. I wanted to take some time off and figure out what I needed to do with the rest of my life. And after the experience with my dad, I'd always been into healthy food, but I started looking at healing properties of food. And so I then thought, this was my message, that I needed to go to school, learn more about whole foods nutrition, healing food, come back, and teach others who I saw so much suffering in long-term care facilities and nursing homes and hospitals in the story with my father, that I really believed that I needed to teach people how to cook food. And I did that. I had a very successful health coaching business, but all along the way, I kept getting requests for this formula. So I thought, there was such a need for this, and I should just at least try to to commercialize this formula. I cannot rest and be at peace until I just try it. And I never thought I would be able to do it. So I spent the next 8 years researching development, trying to take this product that I made in my kitchen to a shelf-stable product that would be accepted in the hospitals. And I finally did it. So we launched in 2015. The Liquid Hope was 2013, and I had no funding. I was a startup, and basically my husband and I just self-funded all along the way. But I was so many people on this formula, I had to pre-work. So the way I funded this business, when I went to the manufacturing process, I sold the product before it was actually produced. I paid for my first few orders that way, but we were sold out at every production run before I got the product. So, I remember Dorothy Lane, I've done all the work with Dorothy Lane, right? I'm already strategically put in school. I had a number of products in their market, and they allowed me to warehouse for a short time. And I remember when my first little UPS truck came and pulled it, and I thought, look at all this product. There were probably 60, 70 cases. When we sold the company in 2018, we had 18 semis full of my goal was to change clinic nutrition worldwide, and I accomplished that with a lot of help, a lot of prayers, and a lot of belief, and a lot of never letting anybody tell me that it couldn't be done, and then people tried to tell me it couldn't be done. So the product is now sold all over the world. It's going clinical trials, and I created a pediatric formula 2 years after we launched it. But I didn't know there were so many children in the tubes. So that was a much needed product as well. Sold the company. They have a number of new products on the market. The company's doing great. I'm finally getting some rest after
Thank you. Let me tell you what I heard. I heard why. Everyone said, what is your why? And I heard your why in your conversation. Did you guys hear that? I heard the why. And I also heard the need. You found the need in the marketplace. And then they use their skill sets and their talents and understanding to be able to meet the need in the market. And then that came from what you already knew. Sometimes, do you think, we're looking for that thing, but what we're looking for, the talent and the gift is in us. The understanding that it is in us already. I call it the oil that you need, that God has given you, that you're going to pour out. So, in our wisdom seekers, wisdom speaks in the marketplace. How did you discover that that was in you? We hit it on that a little bit about when you said, I looked at the can and thought, this is not going to. But you had gone on this vein, but that two things together.
For me, it felt like it came through me. You know, it came through me. I was literally just a vessel for something that really needed to happen. Because trust me, I never thought like God was doing me, Robin Jennifer you, would be the person that brought the world-changing product to me. There's one of the chances.
Absolutely. And I can say, because I had the privilege of working with her, I would meet people in the airport. I would meet people in the air. And God would send these people my way. Either they needed the product, their children, or their parents, or someone they loved was on the product. Some of them would thank God that she had, this is the answer to my prayers. Or someone would say, tell her I said thank you. The last trip I took was in the air, and the gentleman next to me. You know how you bump when you get turbulence, and we started talking. And he asked me what I did, and I told him, so my daughter's on the feed too, and her life has changed. She will always be in the wheelchair, but she's fine, she's alive. And yet tears in his eyes, he said, tell her I said thank you. And so we have this power in us. And wisdom is speaking in the marketplace. That's our theme scripture. Wisdom is speaking. Are we listening? Are we listening to solve world problems? They have feeding tubes with sugar. Sugar, it might as well have been a Milky Way bar, right? Might as well have been a Milky Way bar. And so when Sonia, you said that came from you, your understanding how to have big corporations, and then you saw the need with small companies.
I would say you mentioned it when you said listening. Organizing administratively has always been a gift of mine, but I took it for granted. Everybody does what I do. But it wasn't until I was in corporate America where I would always get complimented and people would say, if you need strategy, you need to go to something. If you need help to figure out how a process should work, you need to go to science. It's just something that I did. It's how my brain works. It's how I just function every day. And it took years for me to realize everybody doesn't think like this. What do you mean? And then I realized that I became the go-to. It happened naturally. And I was pushing it away. Like, oh, that's just natural. That's just, okay, just come on. Just sit in my office. I love whiteboards. I love office supplies. I just love everything that embodies office, ever since I was a little girl. And it wasn't until other people saw it in me and then the need materialized. Because I will say, corporate America honed my skill. But I didn't love my skill until I stepped out on my own and was able to use it the way God really wanted me to use it in the end. This was a training ground. And I loved corporate America until the end. And it made me really get on my knees and to understand how was it something that I loved so much at one point make me so sad now. Toward the end of my career, I was disgruntled. Leadership was changing. I didn't like what I was doing. My phone wasn't ringing. I was the go-to person, like the superstar. How do I become the superstar and then no one's coming into my office for anything? My anxiety went up. Doubts in my head. Am I really that good? But it just won't smoke. Like what? Like, and can I really do what I need to do? But when I stepped away, he was telling me, it's time for you to start new. This is uncomfortable for a reason. I'm making it uncomfortable. And I remember praying because I was the breadwinner at that time. I'm more ambitious between me and my husband because two ambitious people just not working our marriage with 2 kids. So we balanced each other. And with that, it was just, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I'm the breadwinner. How is this going to work? And he said, you're not supposed to figure it out. You're just supposed to follow the faith and follow me. And I literally remember thinking, how am I going to replace the 6 figures that I'm making? And when I tell you one day, I had to step up because I had gotten real complacent at work. I was the person like, we can do this idea. Let's check, I'll make that project, I'll do this, I'll do that. And then toward the end, it was like, okay, whatever you feel is the best for me, and I'll follow through and I'll let my team. And people were looking at me like, I'm like, yeah, that's fine. But I had to bet on myself one last time. And when I tell you, when you get complacent and they don't know what you're thinking, that's when they're like, what's going on? And I remember they were trying some very interesting things, I'll just say, to get me to leave. And I said, no, what you fail to realize is that I basically built this brand new department. I know the policies, I know the protocol, I know the steps. And I exercised my right in those steps. And what would have turned completely different, God said, you know what? I'm going to make it so that you're going to get 6 months severance, benefits, all of that, and you don't have to do anything. And I remember leaving the meeting, like I went from, what am I going to do to, I already laid it out for you, you just have to trust me. So knowing that he gave me that, and I know that was of him, because when I say it dropped out of thin air, it literally dropped out of thin air. I had to really bet on me and step out and start my business because he positioned me. He would have been a slap in his face for me not to. I did not want that breath. I said, no, I said, I'm going to be out here with my knees knocking. And I am going to do this because you know what? You caught me. You always have been there. I need to invite you in more. And when I started inviting him in more, then my vision just not my vision, his vision. Because he was laying the path the entire time, and I allowed myself to just drop my guard. Because again, I'm process oriented. I need to see this text, but it's faith over the facts.
Wow, I like that. That was a good nugget. Faith, I did go by faith. I heard faith. I heard faith, and I walked the faith journey. It's a big part of it. With functional formulas. It is that faith. And you have to, wisdom is speaking, wisdom just spoke just right there. Like God made a way. If you're ready to transition to what God has for you and bigger and greater, the things for this conference is wisdom at the gate. And a gateway is bigger than a door. So she left a job where a door was open to where it was a gate open. And a gate can be a huge city. And so it's just a larger space, increasing your territory. But that is the listening and wisdom is speaking to you. I also heard that you gotta know when it's time. You gotta know when it's time. And I know, Robin, when you transition, you kept saying it's time. It's time. How did that come about? Was it because I know it was overnight?
It was a lot of sleepless nights, honestly. We had been, and my husband came to the company a year after we started the company, and he was right by my side. He was the best son-in-law I had, just more of a son than a son. So I couldn't really never tell him right, my husband. But we were both just so broken down at the start of, with 2005 with my father's brain injury. 2 years later, I got breast cancer. Breast cancer with my father, and it was just a lot of really asking for guidance. Like, what are we supposed to be doing? And we didn't want to stop the business, honestly. We just, physically could no longer do it. We were so burnt out by the conviction. We just knew that it was time to let it go. We thought it was going to come out differently, but it didn't. And then in grade 8, it ended.
And now you're doing, because you think she would retire, she sold the company, think she would retire. And so, funded David Mitchell for the first year, that's here in Dayton, Ohio. And then you work with organic farmers.
So we're starting an organic farming community, and we're trying to work with young farmers to bring them onto the farm and give them the tools they need to do what they love, to follow their passion, as well as on the group and the goodness of without getting us along. And pure food, because now, especially with food scarcity and supply chain issues, I would never be sure. So we're trying to help people do that.
That's awesome. Give our Pamela some. I'm just going to say some things that have come to me, and no questions have come to me. So I was telling someone, I don't have any questions for this Pamela. And I said, because I know them, and then I had to hear. I had to listen to what the Spirit was saying, that He was pulling out of their stories. So as you were listening, that I know you have some questions for individual, for you, yes, for your own personal needs, the entrepreneurs in the house. So we're going to pass the microphone and allow you to ask them now that you've listened to their story. And ask them something specific. They give you their background.
Thank you. Sonia, this question's for you. I heard you talking about how I asked myself how I could replace the six-figure salary. And you did a lot of talking with God, but could you go into more about how you actually overcame that fear, faith over fear, and made the decision to walk away?
Oh, that's a good one. I will tell you in full transparency, when I walked away with the severance, I took 2 months off. I literally needed to detox from corporate America. That's the first thing. Because I will say I lost myself in corporate America because I ended up doing a lot of things they wanted me to do with my skills, and it blurred my vision. And that's just the reality. That's right. And after 2 months, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So until my husband said, okay, now, it's been 2 months. What you gonna do? And I said, I'm gonna go on my own. And because I was so broken, I will say, and I didn't know workplace trauma was a thing then. But it is. I'm like, I went through workplace trauma. And it still sits with me to this day, and I have to fight through it. But what I did is I actually went and I found a coach.
Good.
The first coach I found, because I recommend finding multiple coaches, not one that fits everything. You need one specific coach that can hone in on that thing that you need to help. I got an empowerment coach because I was so broken in my lack of confidence. I ain't never not been a confident person. So I had to build my confidence back up. So I got an empowerment coach. Worked with that empowerment coach for about a year. Then I got a business coach. The business coach helped shape and package what skills I had at that given point that was the low-hanging fruit, because evolution has occurred in my business. So that low-hanging fruit was my VA skills. Remember I said execution on the ground, serving others? At that point, everyone needed VAs at that time. So I said, you know what, I can do that in my sleep. That's not my zone of genius, but it's my zone of excellence. So I pursued that for a year until I discovered strategy is what I want to be known for, taking those ideas out of your head and putting them on paper so that I give you an execution step-by-step plan to turn your idea into income and bring your idea to life. That's where my passion was, but I had to evolve to that. So over a year and a half, I functioned in the low-hanging fruit to fund my business and keep the doors open, right? And then I transitioned, and then I got another coach that helped me grow and scale. Wow. That was the coach that helped me package what I do today and price it accordingly to move to the next level. And through this, I take training, only the right training though. And not webinars, I invest in myself. You have to invest. So that's my journey. There's so much more in that, but that's the step that I took to get from the brokenness of where I was to rebuild and package. But I would suggest start with that low-hanging fruit of what is it that I can give and serve with right now that requires me to do nothing else. What does it require me to invest in anything? Work that till the wheels fall off. And then, as you are doing that, evolve into what you want, because the learnings that you will find of who you serve and what you discover in yourself is going to help mold you to when you're ready to scale in that business that you truly want. So it is just a journey along the way. And there's so much more we could talk afterwards, but that's just a short story. And I hope I answered your question.
Good question. And she had a Christian, so she had 6 months severance. So she had all the actually I had went through that.
To be honest, I did. And my husband, he commends me. I'm the CFO in our household. And he said, I'm so glad that you were managing that, because when I tell you, I cut myself a check every month for that 6 months. So that 6 months literally took me through 6 months.
Wow.
And I disciplined myself. And one thing I did say is when I made the decision to actually leave, I called my financial advisor. That was the first phone call. Even before my husband, I called my financial advisor because he already knew where I was going. I'm like, hey, this is what I think I'm going to do. And she was like, okay. So she prepared me that way. But I actually went back to work for a year. That's what a lot of entrepreneurs don't tell you, that they sometimes have side hustles to fund their business. They're just not jumping out there on their own. They're getting some type of part-time supplement until they get to where they want to be. So for that year, I went back into a different field. I went into nonprofit. And that was very humbling and another transitional moment because I was managing $1 million budgets in corporate America. That mentality is very different, right? $200 is a drop in the bucket for them in the invoice. When you're working for a nonprofit, $200 is like a livelihood for that month.
Yes.
So me shifting from corporate America think to nonprofit think was transformational, and it prepped me for how to manage my business today. Because I don't have, at that point, I didn't have, $20,000 like circling through my account. You have to change your mindset, and you have to negotiate and connect with people a little bit differently when you don't have all that access and you're on the ground. So that changed my whole perspective, and it transitioned me to be ready for a small business thought process. After that year, I got agitated again. I'm like, I know what this feeling is. God said, pay attention to it because it's bad. And I knew that was just temporary. And I knew it was temporary. But when I got that feeling again, I said, husband, it's time for me to truly go out on my own. And that was November 2018. And I haven't looked back and I've been working full-time.
Faith and good planning and actually listening to the next steps we go to. Sometimes we think things are emotion. Sometimes we think that door closed and we're wondering why that door closed and we keep jiggling on the door handle to see if it's going to open again. And that's the way God is taking us forward and moving us to the next gate, to the next gate, to the next gate. And so the doors closed in your life. Ask the Lord to show you that door closed is okay. I had to learn that it's okay. It's okay. Leaving Baltimore Farmers was painful because I loved the company. After Robert left, the culture changed. And it hurt. I had the low self-esteem. And I had all those many different things. And then I had to realize that we're lost. Hello, somebody. That was their loss. People don't recognize your talent and they do. I think they do see it. They just don't want to pay for it.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. That part, they just don't want to pay for it. Anyone else have a question? Another question? Yes, ma'am.
I have one for this beautiful young lady on my left side. I heard you say that your spouse supported you after a year. Can you tell me the process that you got for your spouse to assist you, and did you have to form some type of group before you actually went out there, jumped out there and say, hey, I'm going to the world to do this product? Because sometimes we feel like, that we could just jump out there and do it by ourselves. But can you tell us about the team that you had to form to do that?
Absolutely. So honestly, when I started down the road and I was able to find manufacturing, it was very difficult because I was a startup with this crazy idea with no funding behind me. But I found a wonderful manufacturer in South Carolina, actually. And I think they saw what I saw and the need for the product, and they were willing to take a chance on me as long as I paid up front with cash with the production runs, which were very small at the time. But so that's how I was able to. I explained how I was able to prepay. But as far as our household goes, my husband was a designer and brand international brand manager. So he was an integral part of the business even before I started working for the business. He did all of the packaging, design, all of the website design, which saved a ton of money. So between the two of us, we had a lot of talent, so we could keep it really lean. But I thought I was just going to be doing it by myself. I thought I would have a little business, and I would go to the warehouse every day. I processed all the orders. I talked to all of the customers. I took the orders. I took my truck and filled it with boxes of liquid and drove to the UPS store every day with this carts. And, kept growing and growing. And after a year, I just said, I really need your help full time. And he had not been happy with his job because he was working in just commercial advertising. And in his words, he felt he was contributing to landfills, to products that don't make a difference. So, you know, he saw the difference that it made in my father's life. And so, I actually was able to start paying him because we were so successful. The first year we launched in the third quarter of 2013, and the first year I made $300,000, and I thought that was a lot of money. I'm like, $300,000, that I thought would always be me, but I kept growing and growing, and I had to hire what I call my salesperson.
Yes.
It was wonderful, but you know, well, again, this was divine guidance. I truly believe because although she had sales, pharmaceutical sales background, when she came on board, what we found was miraculously, I got a billing code. I applied for a billing code for everything came up with get one, but it became I was able to get a billing code that was all through insurance. So, and what her role became was calling up pharmacies and asking them if they would carry the code. And, you know, or we also offer a free insurance assistant for our customers. So our customers would call us, and Phyllis would go about finding a distributor in their area, calling the DME, asking if they would carry it. So her role became something, it was still sales, but it was more of assisting the customer. So, our main focus was on the customer and helping because so many people with this product. And but as far as the funding, we were able to generate enough money to we didn't take a paycheck, you know, for the first year. We did have a little bit of savings, but after that we were able to start taking payroll, believe it or not. And then by the time we sold the company, we had, I think, 13, 14 employees on site and several a number of service providers throughout the country. And and here's a great part of the story. So in year 2, I met a gentleman in Cincinnati who's quite had glioblastoma, and a friend of ours is a neurosurgeon, and he suggested that the lady start taking the pill because she was struggling with her health. And she started taking the pill, so the gentleman called me up and he wanted to meet me. Because did such wonderful things for her energy, for her health. So I met him, and he said, you know, I'd like to invest in your company. And my CFO said, you don't need an investor, you can sell something to investors. But we were growing so rapidly, and we were getting ready to start looking at international distribution. And I thought it would be nice to have a nest egg in the bank in case we needed it. So I accepted his offer. So overnight, without trying, we raised $1.6 million for the business. Yes, when we sold the company, we had never touched that $1.6 million. It was still in the bank. So that was, we were very, very blessed. My dad passed away after 3 years. Wow. And I have always, my dad, as Pam mentioned to someone earlier, was a preacher. And I grew up in the church, and I always felt that my dad, even though he is no longer in this earth, he's just continued. That's right.
Exactly. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. And building her team, we were a small family, and so it wasn't necessarily, she had the ability to look past the resume and to see the person. And so even though my years, well, I had 0 years, and she asked for 7, what impressed her was that we were a military family. And she said, if you can move your family around the world with your husband, and you are an intact, functional family, you have the fortitude to do that, you can do this. And so it's not necessarily, when you're looking to build your team, it's not necessarily what you see on the paper, right? Wisdom speaks. Wisdom speaks, right? And so everyone that came through that became a part of that. And we all love working with us. And so that's how we built that team with that eyesight we had.
And everybody who came through the door to look for the company, I believe there were some, they had, and as with Pam, there were people that I didn't know that were always really being done. I just knew they would have a huge role, and we were speaking about her gift and expertise. I'm like, she learned it all.
Yes,
teaching. She used to manage 88 Women's Battles in Cincinnati, and she's a beautiful Indian woman, and she contacted me. She had stopped working, had children, she was ready to get back into the workplace, and they just said, I'd love to work with the company, and I said, well, come on, let's chat. And she loved it, and I said to Brian, my husband, I don't know what she's going to do, but we need to hire her, she's going to do something. She was a mentor in March. She was, if anybody had a strategic planning question, it would be, go ask Pamela. So, I mean, just following your heart and divine guidance, I believe, is so much more important than a resume. Being able to connect with people and understand their heart and their energy, I think is really, really important. So,
Did you enjoy this, ladies? So we want to thank you, Robin, for coming. Thank you, Sonia, for coming. I listened and learned so much today, and I'm going to tell you, wisdom was speaking. I hope you enjoyed it. So you can take about a 5-minute break and allow our next panelists to come and to take their place on the stage. And this one is wisdom in a time of crisis. Give our panelists a hand.